كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر.
Just to give you understanding of my childhood and how I was raised, and you'll see not having the right how to say, the family unit, not having a mother and a father there that's supportive and teaching you in life and advising you, how that could sort of mislead you in life and later on create problems not only for yourself but society as well. So it's very important that I'm sure a lot of you brothers have children of your own, that the family unit, that Islam really has to be established inside the home, how important it is that we teach our children our Islam in the correct manner, have the right concept, so they have a firm conviction in their deen. So being in such an environment, the society in which we live, we can get affected very easily because the shaitan is all around us here. We're not living in an ideal Islamic state or an Islamic environment. So the shaitan, he's got all the tools to pull us away. So we have to be very strong individuals, very strong Islamic personalities, have strong conviction in our faith to keep us on the straight path. So very important to keep the family unit reminded and do your duties, fulfill your duties as a father, as a husband, and same with your wife. She needs to be a mother to her children and a good wife also, and a supportive wife. So it's very important, the family unit. So I'll just give you a little insight of my growing up. Okay, I didn't have parents. I didn't get raised by my parents. I got raised by my grandparents. Okay, so my mother, she was a single parent. My father took off when I was about 1.5 years old. Okay, so if you can imagine, back in the 70s, it was very hard. They didn't get any benefits being a single parent. So she get like benefits, but it was like $10 a fortnight or something. So it was barely enough to sort of to survive on. So she was forced to work. Not only one job, but she worked 2 jobs. But she thought it was best for me to live with my grandparents. And rightly so, I think she made the correct decision. So I lived with my grandparents and they raised me. So I've got fond memories of my grandfather. My grandfather used to be a science teacher, and he was one who pondered. He had a lot of science knowledge. And he used to bring my attention to the stars, the planets, the stars, and Earth. And he was very, he was an intellect, He really liked to think and ponder about creation itself. And I remember him, a fond memory, used to carry me on my shoulders and used to point to the stars and explain planets. And he told me that God, there was a creator behind all this. I don't know that he had any faith. I don't know if he was, from the Christian faith or anything like that. I don't remember any religious symbols in the house or anything like that. And he never spoke of Jesus or any prophet or anything. But he believed that there was a creator behind the creation. And I remember being 3, 4 years old and him explaining things like that to me. And I always remember it. My grandmother was a Buddhist, so she wasn't a practicing Buddhist, and she didn't have anything in the house. She had this small little black box which was tucked away in the back of the room somewhere, but there was nothing too religious or anything like that. She put like fruit in there and stuff, which I thought it was a bit crazy when I was a kid, but she wasn't religious in any shape or form. Just a little funny story is I had a friend who lived a couple of doors up, and his mother thought it was a good idea that I'd go Sunday school and learn a little bit about Jesus and the Christian faith. So I went with him to a Sunday school, and the teacher sat us on the floor, and she got this picture of Isa Saddam, and she addressed the class and she said, "Does anyone know who this is?" And a few kids put their hand up and said Jesus and these types of things, and she was getting to the point that Jesus was our Rabb. So she was trying to tell us that Jesus was God. And at a very young age, I really interrupted and I said, no, that's not God, because God, you can't imagine. He's big. That's what my grandfather told me, so I just repeated what he said. It just didn't make sense that a God looks like us and is a man. So that didn't really sit with me too well, even at a young age. I remember I used to play rugby league, under 7s rugby league, and my footy coach used to pick me up. And I remember one time I was at the letterbox waiting for him to pick me up, and it was late on this particular day. And I saw my mate's family come in. He's had a brother, sister, and a mother and father. And I remember looking up to the sky and asking Allah if I could also live with my parents and live like a normal family life. It's something that when you don't have, whatever you don't have, you sort of want for yourself, So I was communicating with God even from a very young age, 6 or 7 years old, talking with God, asking Him to live with my mother and father. So yeah, and I remember that day. Thinking about it, I remember that day. It's why he was late. It was the day that John Lennon got assassinated. Because when my footy coach picked me up, I remember him playing a Beatles song, and I asked him, "What is this?" And he was really upset. And I don't know if you know John Lennon from the Beatles, but you probably don't. But you do, yeah. He actually got assassinated on that day. So I thought about that later on because that was a memory that flashed back to me. Yeah, it's interesting. But so I thought about God. I knew God existed at a young age. I knew that there was a creator. I didn't know who he was or what he looked like, but I knew God. There was a creator. Moving on, when I got into high school and was a young man, hanging around the wrong crowd as coming from a non-Muslim or some sort of faith, you sort of just get friends from the general society and your schooling and stuff. And I hang around with all the wrong crowd. You could say I hung around with the bad kids, and they played a big influence in my life. And I lived a pretty carefree, careless sort of life, sometimes ruthless. Didn't really think too much. I sort of lived my life to my own desires, my own whims and desires. And my life was about benefit. Whatever benefited me, I indulged in. And what didn't benefit me, I sort of stayed away from to an extent. But when you hang around the wrong crowd, you really fall into the traps of society. I had this immoral behaviour, and I had this only live once mentality. I live life to the fullest. You don't hear that saying all the time, like you only live once. You work with some people in your job, and you might come from a non-religious background, and they just want to live it up. It's like, just live it up. You might die tomorrow, so be happy. Seek happiness. And usually in society, when they seek happiness, they turn to alcohol and drugs, and other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because they're not really happy inside, so they try to look for an alternative. So they turn to other things other than Allah. We know that in ourselves as believers, that when a calamity happens to us, where do we turn to? We don't go to the alcohol. We don't turn to drugs. We turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Him to help us and to guide us and to strengthen us. And we know that this is a test from Allah. Ultimately, this is just a test. So we want to pass this test. We want to please our Rabb, and we move on as believers. But a disbeliever, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that idea of Islam. So he's sort of in the darkness. He doesn't have the light that we have. And that's what I found myself in. I was in the darkness. So whenever I felt sad or things weren't working out or a calamity would hit, I would abuse drugs and alcohol. And it got to the stage where I was abusing drugs and alcohol on a daily basis. I was hanging around with the same people, day in, day out, doing the same thing. So when you're in the darkness, you really are in the darkness. You really have no direction, you've got nowhere to turn or to go to. You don't have Islam, you don't have any guidance. So I was pursuing the normal things like materialistic. I was very materialistic. I wanted nice clothes, nice shoes, I wanted to smell nice, or buy this expensive perfume. You know, it's a society sort of pulls you into looking the part and trying to fit in. So you buy or waste your money on all this sort of stuff. You know, and I was trying to seek happiness through wealth, having wealth and attaining nice things. You heard the saying, you know, the American dream, you know, to own your house and have a car in the garage and your wife and your kids, and maybe have a holiday house or a vacation once a year, something like that. You know, like, that's what I thought life was. I thought that's what we had to achieve. I thought being successful in this life was to achieve material gain, to achieve wealth, and I thought that would give me happiness. You know, so you see, you know, the people you work with, you know, wherever you work, this is how they live their life. They look forward to the weekend football game. They look forward to the gathering at the pub or the club, you know, or the weekend barbecue to maybe get drunk, or, you know, like, they don't really have anything to really live for. It's temporary happiness. It's not like, as a believer, we're very content, we're happy because we've been chosen by Allah, we've been given this gift of Islam. So that internally, that makes us happy. You know, I'll get on with the story. But society itself, I'll just say this, society itself determines for us what true success is. You know, if you've got a nice car, you've got a nice house, you have an ideal job, a good position in that job, that's what they call success. By the clothes that you wear, the people you hang around with, you associate with, or the area in which you live. This is what they like to tell you what success is. And in Islam, we know what success is. It's through Islam. It's the deen of haqq of Islam. You know, and pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us success in this life and in the next life, inshallah. Anyway, in my teenage years, I had a bit of a problem with drugs and alcohol, and it got pretty serious. I lived in a little unit in Parramatta by myself, and I had an auntie who's a nurse for 30 plus years, and she gave me a surprise visit one day, and she could see that I was in a bad state. At the time she visited, I was high on drugs. I was lost. You know, I really needed help. I could probably say that it was probably the lowest point of my life, lowest stage of my life at that time. So it was a blessing that she came at that time. And she saw my state, and she thought the only way to help me was if I move in with her and she looks after me. And at the time when she mentioned that she would help me, I was sort of denying that I had a problem. But I needed to change my life, and I wanted to change my life. I had intentions to do so for a long, long time. Anyway, I took the opportunity. I thought maybe this is my opportunity to get out of this situation which I'm in. And she turned up the next day in a truck, and she started moving my things. So I started moving my things in this truck. I thought maybe this is my beginnings to something new. You know, maybe living a straight life and not dealing with this unhappy or deception that I was living in. So I packed the truck up with my auntie, and I moved up to the Blue Mountains with her. I moved there and started unpacking things, and on the way up I'm thinking that maybe if by chance if I get the urge to want to get drugs or alcohol, these types of things, that maybe if my auntie's at work, that I could probably drive back down to Sydney, get what I need or what I thought I needed, you know, drugs or something like that, and still feed my habit without my auntie knowing. But when I got there, she actually pulled the leads out of my car and pulled the battery out of my car, so I was stranded. I couldn't go anywhere. So when she did that, the reality hit that, wow, I really got to make a go of this. I really got to, you know, try and control this habit, or get rid of this habit altogether and start a new life. So that was the very beginnings of the change, the transition. So my auntie, she would cook for me, feed me well, look after me, and I was going through a really rough time just going cold turkey, abusing drugs for such a long time was a really spooky experience. I would sleep all day and I'd be awake all night. It got to the point where even when I was holding a glass of water, I was shaking to drink a glass of water. It went through some pretty rough times. But my auntie, she persevered and she stayed steadfast and she really wanted to help me, and she would talk with me and be that moral support for me, feed me well, she'd give me vitamins, and over a period of 6-7 months I really started to feel good about myself. I was going for walks, jogs, these types of things. I joined the gym in Katoomba and I started working out there 2 or 3 times a week, starting to take shape again, feeling healthy. Yeah, and I started to feel normal again. It's something that I haven't felt for a long time. I haven't felt normal for a very long time. So I did that. And there came a time where my auntie, after helping me out for about a year, a bit over a year, she decided to shout herself on a holiday to Fiji. And rightly so, she had to put up with me for the last year. I put her through a pretty rough time. But she persevered. She's an auntie who loves me like my own mother. So she deserved a holiday, and she went away. And while she was gone, I was going through all these old boxes and things, because I finally felt good about myself again. I got my confidence back. My life was sort of starting to take shape. I wasn't hanging around those bad people anymore. I wasn't abusing drugs. I wasn't doing alcohol. I wasn't doing all those haram type things. I wasn't living a haram lifestyle. Well, not as much as like before. While she was gone, I started cleaning up. Because I cleaned up my life, I thought I'd go clean up these boxes I had lying around the place. So I was going through these boxes, throwing out some old stuff that I didn't think I would need, with the plan to move back down to Sydney, find some work and start a new life, a clean life. And I found this old diary in one of the boxes. And in the back of this diary I had a checklist. This checklist was probably about a few years old, maybe about 5 years old. Actually, I had a few diaries, but I would write the same checklist on the back of each diary, but I would never tick anything off because I never would do anything on the list. So I got this diary and I started ticking off these things. On the top of the list it was give up alcohol. So I said, okay, well I've done that, so I ticked it off. Then it was give up drugs. And I'd done that, so I ticked it off. I was getting really excited because I'm ticking all these things off. Finally, I'm starting to get my life back together after all these years. And there was a few things on the list like, stop crime and being a menace to society, and I'll tick them off. Stop smoking cigarettes, and I'll tick that off. Eat well, join the gym, and I was ticking them off. But the last thing on the list, I don't know why it was the last thing, but it was the last thing on the list was find God, find Allah. And I'm thinking, how do I do that? How do I find Allah? I have no idea. There's no guidebook. There's no 1-800 number that you call. I just didn't know how to do that. And I really wanted to tick this thing off my list. I just didn't know how to go about it. So I went outside and I sat on a rock. And I don't know if you've ever been in the bush or the wilderness or the outback, but it's just silence all around you. And the sky is beautiful, the surroundings is beautiful, it's fresh air, and it's just total silence. And I'm just sitting on this rock, and I'm looking down, and I'm thinking, how can I find God? How can I find Allah, my Creator? The Creator of all things. The Creator of all things, and the Creator of all that's in existence. And I'm thinking, and I'm pondering, how do I do this? And I was just stuck. I didn't know what to do. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brought my attention to the sky. I looked up and the sky was a magnificent sky. A sky I've never seen even to this day. I've never seen a sky like it. The sky, the canopy of the sky was black, the darkest night you could ever imagine. And the stars, there was millions of them, and they were huge and they were bright and they were sparkly. And it just blew me away to see this beautiful night sky. And when I looked at it, I said, oh my God. As you know, even non-believers will say that term. They'll see something or something will happen and they'll say, oh my God. But they don't really give it much thought after that of what they really said. But when I looked at this sky, it was such a beautiful sky that I said, oh my God. And then I realized that I just addressed the Creator of all things, the Creator of the stars, the Creator of the sky, the Creator of myself and everything around me. And I realized I just addressed Allah. And then from that moment, I started talking with Him. I started, talking about, what I've been through, and I was just bearing my heart with Him. The way I treated my mother, the way I treated my auntie, the way I was in society. I just bared my heart with Him. And honestly, I was just crying. I had all this emotion built up inside of me after all these years, and I was crying and crying and crying. It was pretty full on. But after a good cry, you always feel a lot better. I let out all that emotion. And I was just talking to God, and I put my hands up like this, just telling Him, look, thanks for the times, for helping me through the hard times, and can you guide me to the true religion? If you guide me to the true religion, I'll never leave it. Just show me the way. I don't want to go back to my old lifestyle. I want a new start, a new fresh life, a new life. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed Allah's support. I needed the one who created me. I needed to rely on Him. I needed His help to keep me on the straight path. Because like I said earlier in my talk, that your surroundings, the shaitan, he doesn't stop. Day and night, he does not stop. If he's not in this year, he's in this year. He just doesn't stop, right? And then we've got the society around us, where everywhere we look left, we look right, we see haram. We look up, we look down, we see haram. Everywhere around us is haram. So as Muslims in a society where we see this corruption all around us, it's very easy to be pulled back, or I was fearing that I could be easily pulled back into that rut, that lifestyle that I once lived. And that's something I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go back to that. So I needed Allah. I knew that I needed Allah. I needed help. Anyway, I went back inside after bearing my heart to my Rabb and started packing my boxes again and stuff. And my lead up to Islam is I moved back down to Sydney and I hooked up with an old friend of mine. He was a Lebanese Christian guy. We grew up together. We've known each other. I've known his family for many, many years. We spent a lot of our childhood together. He was one guy that I could always turn to. He would always help me. He was like a brother to me. I knocked on his door after many years. The last few years, the few years before, the last few years, I really attained a really serious drug habit. So I stopped seeing this friend, but I didn't want him to see my condition. I wanted to keep my habit away from this particular friend of mine. So he had no idea that I was abusing hardcore drugs. So I sort of kept that away from him. So I didn't see him not only for a year, I didn't see him for about 3 years. I just totally lost contact with him. Just because I was embarrassed of my state that I was in. I didn't want to sort of let him see the condition I was in. Anyway, I knocked on his door after all these years. And I asked, he always had a business, and I knew he'd always got hiring guys to work with him. I knew he would help me out. So I knocked on his door, and he was very shocked to see me. He thought I was either dead or locked up or just vanished from this earth. He couldn't get in contact with my mother or any member of my family, because my mother made a transition, she made a move to the old house, from the old house. So he couldn't find me, didn't know where I was. I totally lost contact. So when he saw me, he was like he saw a ghost. He got really shocked. I said, look, I need a job, I need a place to stay, can you help us out? And at that time, he had an auntie who had a granny flat out the back at Maryland's, and it was vacant at the time. So he said, look, let's go down and check that out. If you like it, you can take it. I went down, had a look. It was a lot better conditions than what I was living in a few years prior. So I thought it was like a palace, really. It was quite nice. So I said, yeah, I'll take it. So he gave me a job. Within 2 days I was working with him. And he was going into business. This is where I grew up with Muslims, but I never grew up with a practicing Muslim. I never really got spoken to about Islam at all. Some of my friends were Muslim, but they never prayed. and they didn't carry the character of the Rasul. They lived the same life as I lived. So I didn't think anything of Islam. I didn't think they were any different to myself. I abused drugs, they were abusing drugs. So Islam was just a word. I heard it a couple of times, but I didn't know what it was. Anyway, my friend was going into business with this practicing Muslim guy, so he was having meetings with him twice, 3 times a week. So I'd be with my friend, and I got introduced to this practicing Muslim guy, this brother. And the way he introduced himself, he shook my hand like a gentleman, he smiled, he had that character, Islamic character, the Islamic personality, he had the character of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The way he spoke to me, he always spoke very profoundly. He didn't waste his time with gibber or jabber. He spoke a straight word all the time. And I was really attracted to his character. His character I've never seen in any human being before in my life. And I asked my friend, I'm like, who is this guy? He goes, oh, he's a Muslim. And I feel that he's a trustworthy man and I want to go into business with him. Because apparently whatever this brother touched turned to gold. He was very successful in business. That was the rumour. So my friend wanted to do business with him. So he went into business with this Muslim brother, and I got to know this Muslim brother over a period of maybe 4 or 5 months. Every time I saw this brother, he would welcome me with a beautiful welcoming, a smile, his character. I saw the way he treated his wife, the way he treated his kids, and it just blew me away. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Just the family unit. What I spoke about earlier, how important a family unit is. He had that. He had that special family unit that I've never seen before in my life. It's something that I wanted for myself. And I looked at his character, and I'm like, he's a real man. And I started asking him about his religion. Why is he like this? Where does he get this character from? And he started talking about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The more he talked about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the more I fall in love with the Rasul. And he would implement his character. He would tell me things about his religion. I would ask him questions. He would come back with me with an answer that fulfilled my heart. It just fulfilled my heart as being true. I was content with what he said. Everything he said just made sense. It was just common sense. It just fulfilled my heart as being true. So I kept asking him questions, and he would say things like, Adam, if there's any other questions you need, he'd give me his phone number. He goes, you can ring me 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. He goes, my door's always open to you. Like this is sort of things that you don't hear from your normal guy in the street. He would welcome me into his house. He would spread the food, spread the water. His kids were very, very nice and polite, well-mannered. For such young little kids, they're like little gentlemen. Amazing. Like they were like little men, little mashallah. Now they're like this big, alhamdulillah, mashallah. And just the way his wife was, he would prepare the dinner, spread the food. I've never seen this before. In my whole life, I've never seen this hospitality, sincere hospitality. You get some people get you a drink, put it in front of you, and they sit down and don't give you a time of day. It was different. It was done with the conduct and the akhlaq, and that was very attractive to me, very, very attractive. And when he spoke about Islam, he never compromised it. He didn't let me hear Islam that maybe that I wanted to hear. He told me Islam for what Islam is, and that was also very attractive. Because if he was to compromise the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it wouldn't be so, I'll just think it's like any other deen. But he didn't do that. He was very firm, very steadfast. He drew that line between haqq and batil very clearly. So if you ever given da'wah to a non-Muslim, don't compromise. Because if you compromise, it's just like any other deen. That person is just going to think, if for instance, just a scenario, if a non-Muslim, you're working on your neighbour and he's Christian, And he says, I'll come and have a Christmas dinner with me and my family. You need to draw that line there and say, oh, look, thank you very much for the invitation. But I'm a Muslim, we don't do that. We don't celebrate that. You need to draw that line very clearly. Because the moment you say you accept, you've just watered down your Islam, and that's no longer attractive to him. You've got to make that line a distinctive line. That, yes, you respect him as your neighbour, and you speak humble words with him, and you show him the akhlaq and the character of the Rasul. Yes, you do. But when you speak with him with wisdom. And you don't compromise your deen, because at the end of the day, Islam is not yours or mine. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have no right to take from it. We have no right to add to it. It's already perfect. When the Rasul's last sermon, he said your deen is being completed. It's perfected also. You cannot add to it, you don't have to take away from it. So give it its haq, give it its rights. As Muslims, we don't compromise this deen. We are believers in Islam, we are believers in Allah and the Rasul. We don't compromise this deen for anything or anybody or any price. It's not ours to tamper with. We don't copy and paste it and chop it and change it. We have no right to do this. So don't ever, as advice from someone who was from the Jahiliyyah and now is a Muslim, don't ever compromise your deen. Don't ever. Because that was very attractive to me. That's what brought me to Islam. Not only his character, just him being firm and steadfast on his deen. Tell the deen the way it is. Anyway, after a few months of questioning him and stuff, I was pretty convinced with Islam. I had a good feeling that what he was telling me was haqq, was truth. But I just wanted to confirm. And subhanAllah, I bumped into a few Christian priests along the way, and I thought, well, here's my opportunity to just get their perception, just so I can make the right decision. You know, I promised Allah, if He gave me the haqq, the deen, that I won't leave it, but I want it to be the right deen. I want to feel comfortable, I want to be sure that this is the right way. And I bumped into a Christian priest at a petrol station, and I thought, well, here's my opportunity to just ask him a couple of questions, and you know, just make a decision of which way I wanted to go. And this Christian priest, he had the big hat and the big abaya, and he had a massive cross, big salib, massive one, it was like this big. And I thought, I'll ask this guy, you know, this priest, obviously he's got knowledge, he wouldn't dress this way if he wouldn't have knowledge of his deen. And I asked him what's his perception of Jesus. And he pat me on the back and he said, have faith, my son. And I went, that's not an answer. And he got in his car and he drove off. And I was just left standing there. Here I was sincerely just wanting to ask some questions, and he had no time for me. Just absolutely no time. For us, the Muslim brother, he always had time for me. He would have an appointment and make a phone call and gently and respectively apologise for being late, but he put his priorities straight. Maybe that meeting wasn't so important, he's got some leeway, so he would apologise for being late and stuff, but he felt that my situation was more important. He made time for me. For this Christian guy had made no time for me, he wanted to run away from me. And I knew from that moment, I had a feeling, and I made my decision at that time that Islam was the truth, was the haqq, and I wanted it for me, and I wanted to be Muslim. Alhamdulillah. And that evening, that very evening, I went to that Muslim brother's house, I approached him, and I said, what do I need to do to become a Muslim? And he got very, very happy. He gave me a beautiful hug, subhanAllah. And he took me to the Isha prayer. So I prayed my first Isha prayer at the Turkish Mosque in Auburn. I'm sure you've all been there, yeah? So he took me there, and we lined up in the ranks to pray, and this was all new to me. I remember stepping into the mosque feeling, wow, what's this place, you know, it's beautiful. I just loved it. I've been in a few churches in my time, like in the Jahiliyyah, and when I would go into the church, I would always feel I'd get cold shivers, like, yeah, when your blood goes cold, like, I just never felt right in a church. And when I stepped into the mosque, I felt total peace, like total, I got no statues looking at me, I just felt comfortable. I felt very, very comfortable. And I lined up in the ranks and we prayed Isha. And I prayed with the brothers. And that was also a beautiful feeling. But I must add, in that time when I was talking to the brother, he would wash in front of me and he would pray. And what I used to do, I used to go home and mimic him. This is before I was a Muslim. And I used to go home and wash, and I used to pray. Just talk to Allah, I recognize you as my Lord, my Lord. I want to worship you. Guide me, keep me straight. Don't let me go fall into that horrible life I was in. And I was doing that. So to finally do it in the mosque with the brothers was just it was beautiful. It was an awesome feeling. Anyway, after the prayer, we went out in this garage out the back of the mosque. After the prayer, after Isha, they lock up the mosque and sort of get everyone out, right? So we're in this garage at the back, and there was about 15, maybe 20 brothers out the back. Someone's going to take Shahada, right? So everyone's gathering. And they talked with me for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just explaining what Islam is, do I really want to make this decision in my life, and what it means to be a Muslim. And I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it. So I did the Shahada, and I became Muslim, alhamdulillah. And the boys, they picked up beard, and they give me hugs, and tell them that they're going to be there for me, and if there's anything I need, and the things we do, we have the character of the Rasul, or we try to have the character of the Rasul, right? And then from there I became Muslim. So this brother that introduced me to Islam, he held my hand for about a year and a half. He was teaching me how to pray. I would see, he would take me to the mosque, make sure I'm going to the mosque after work. We'd go to lectures, these types of things. So he held my hand, so to speak, until I sort of grew wings and flew myself. And when he felt that I was strong enough to go on my own, he let me go. And by then I got to know a lot of brothers in that time. I felt comfortable in my surroundings. I felt comfortable with the mosque. I knew a few brothers. So alhamdulillah, I was okay to let go then. So that's basically my story with Islam. It's not a fantastic story, but it's a journey. It's a journey that you talk. But what to take from this is the importance of dawah to the non-Muslim. Always have that character. Always have that taqwa. Remember that Allah is watching you. Have that character. Because that goes a long way. You're talking to your work peers or your neighbour. There's a way to give dawah to them. You've got to draw that line and be firm in your deen. Stay steadfast and don't compromise. Rule number 1: never compromise your deen. And use your hikmah. Have wisdom in whom you're talking to, and have that smile. What is a good way to speak to them? Is always smile and answer the questions to your best ability. Be gentle with them, but firm. If you can get that fine balance of being firm, not compromising, and being gentle with hikmah, it's a good way to deal with your neighbour and your work colleague. Dawah to your Muslim brother is we're full gentle, we're sincere, we're humble with him, we have patience with him, we speak to him in a gentle manner. True? Rasul said, speak gentle to your fellow Muslim brothers. It's a different type of advice. We give advice to our brothers, or we give dawah to our brothers, but we're gentle with our brothers. Because what we want for our brother, we want for our own selves. Right? So that's the type of dawah we do between ourselves, internally. But the brother with your neighbor, with the dawah with your neighbor, or the dawah with your work colleague, or someone who comes to your shop or buys things off you, there's a different type of dawah. You need to be firm, not compromise your deen, but have that character of the Rasul. Have that gentleness, that smile, but never compromise. And the other way of if you're dealing with politicians who are open enemies to Islam, who spill the blood of the Muslims all around the world, well, we have a different approach. We have a different dawah for them. As we don't compromise our deen, and we don't have to be polite to them because we challenge them. We hold them to account. We yell at them, we scream at them, we jump up and down because they're openly our enemy. Okay, so we need to put that in perspective. So that's the way we should give dawah. So if we can remember those three ways: be gentle with your brother, have patience with him, with your neighbour or your work colleague, don't compromise the deen, but yet have that character of Islam, the character of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But with the ones who openly take us to war and our enemies, and they openly claim that they're taking us to war and they're spilling our blood of our Muslim brothers all around the world, we take a different approach there. Okay? We need to be firm. We need to yell. We need to scream. We need to tell them what they're doing is wrong and hold them to account, because that's our brothers over there. That's our sisters over there. We are one ummah. We've got to understand that also. So that's my advice, brothers. That's my journey, and that's my advice to you in giving dawah to the Muslim, to the non-Muslim, and to our open enemies.